Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Grumpy Dads. Before we carry on, hit like, hit subscribe, hit that bell so that you're aware of any new content that we've got coming up. We've got some amazing guests coming up over the next few weeks, so you won't want to miss it. I want to welcome, as always, Chris.
Hello, mate. And I want to come up with a different description because I keep on saying amazing guest.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, is there another word I can use? Incredible guest. Let's use incredible this time.
Incredible, fabulous, interesting.
Let's go with incredible, just so it stays. Amazing started to water down now the more I use it. So we're going to say the incredible Laura. How you doing, Laura?
I'm good, thank you. I'm not very incredible, but I'm good. Thanks very much.
Don't have like a red outfit and you stretch your arms or anything like that?
Not really.
Laura, thanks for joining us. As always, we start the show off with Icebreaker Antics. I scour the net looking for products with, I was going to say 1-star reviews, but I got another 5-star again. You've got to guess the product based on the reviews. So,
oh, great.
Yeah, if you guess it on the first guess, you get 3 stars. On the second guess, it's 2. And on the third guess, it's 1 star. So first product, first review. Brought 3 weeks ago, and already they are starting to perish.
Avocados.
Did they last that long? I don't know.
They're either totally inedible or gone. There's like about 3 minutes when they're fine. And so, yeah, that's it.
That's why guacamole's so popular.
Yeah, exactly.
You can just use them anytime then.
It's not avocados for that one. Duncan, what's your guess?
3 weeks and already starting to perish. I'm going to say flowers.
Flowers. It is not. Second review. Worn once, but they actually hurt to get on.
Acrylic nails.
That's another good guess, but it's not correct.
Mm.
Duncan, what's your guess?
Part of me wants to just say underwear, because if you've worn it for 3 weeks, they're going to perish. Make sure you're washing, people. It's important. I'm going to say odor eaters, the little inner soles you put in shoes.
There's some really good guesses here, but no, it's not. It could be any of these. So tight, I can sit while standing up.
Leggings.
Not leggings. Not leggings, no.
Yoga pants?
Well, it's the last one, isn't it? So I can give you a bit of an extra clue. What's really sort of tough wearing, and you could sit down while standing up. It's that tough.
A sports cup.
No, similar to one other Icebreaker Antic product where they said when their legs, when they walked, their legs rubbed together and it made farting sounds.
Some cycling pants.
No, I'm going to have to tell you, aren't I? It's leather trousers.
Oh.
But I'm still going to give you 1 star for that. I can't not give any stars. We haven't done that yet. So second product, first review. Thick, sticky, and not nice to use.
Is it me? Is it my turn?
Yeah,
you got 1 guess per product. So it's either.
You're not the answer, though. You're not thick, sticky, or
Guacamole. I'm sticking with the avocados.
Was that your guess again? Avocados.
Avocados again.
Well, guacamole. So guacamole, yeah. So kind of processed avocados.
It's a broad guess, but no, it's not. It's still not right. Duncan, what's your guess?
Thick, sticky, and unpleasant to use. Is that right?
Thick, sticky, and not nice to use. Same thing, really.
Same thing. So yeah, paraphrasing. You're correcting me on something that's exactly the same. We're starting to get to be like a married couple now, Chris.
It is.
I am going to say some sort of face cream.
Face cream is a good guess, but it's not correct. Aftertaste is vile, used for 2 weeks and no change.
Mouthwash.
No.
Collagen supplement.
What, sorry?
A collagen supplement.
No, it's not. These are really good guesses. I feel guilty for not getting it. Makes my gums itch and there's soft lumps in it.
Toothpaste.
There we go. We're on 2 stars. I'm going to have to watch some previous episodes whether I'm making it more difficult than before. Or
the clues are definitely getting more obscure. Right?
They are.
It's definitely a trend.
I try and level them. The first one's really difficult to get. The second one is kind of, you got a chance, and third one for definite. We'll go on to our third, which is a 5-star. Beautifully shaped, elegant, and sleek.
My wife.
Oh, you're such a suck-up. No, it's not.
No, because I insult her in almost every episode. I'll take the opportunity to give her credit.
It's a new Volvo.
The new Volvo. It's not. It's not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a good guess.
Volvo and sleek don't normally go in the same sentence, do they?
Well, I like them.
I do like the new SUV. I think it's the XC90. That looks nice. And we're thinking about getting it as well. But anyway, second review.
I haven't guessed. Oi.
Sorry?
I haven't had a guess.
You said your wife.
Said your wife.
Oh, that was a joke. That wasn't a guess.
You would have taken it if it was the right answer. Go on then, you can have a guess.
No, you made your point.
No, you're on 2 stars. You're doing awful this week. Go on, have another guess.
iPhone.
No, it's a good guess. I bought 2. They set the tone of the room.
Lamps.
Yes, perfect.
Yay.
That was very, very good. Okay, so 4 stars. That puts, I don't know where.
I lost.
Comfortably in joint last place, sadly.
No, I think at this time, because this will be up.
We got a 3-star, didn't we?
Yeah, last week. Okay, we're on to our next part of Icebreaker, which is crazy questions, random questions that you can answer. If you could know the truth to one question, what would it be?
Does Trump really think it was a rig in the election?
Do you really want to know the answer to that? Not who shot JFK or did they land on the moon?
Did they land on the moon?
Is the earth really flat?
Probably something like, is there an afterlife?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Or will they ever bring back stopgap chocolate? Do you remember stopgap chocolate? Nobody else remembers it. I'm the only person that remembers it. I think I might have invented it even. But I loved it. It was this round chocolate thing with a hole in the middle. It was amazing. And I just want to know whether they'll ever bring it back. Or Cabana bars.
Who made stopgap chocolate?
I can't remember. And if I Google it, I can't find it. So it's like some kind of weird parallel universe thing that only I experienced. But
wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes they used to test kind of products in certain areas, but I haven't never come across anyone else who's heard of it.
Have you? Are you sticking with your Trump answer for that one?
No. That was just a throwaway.
we know the answer.
Yeah, we know the answer. Everyone knows the answer.
Yeah.
I want to know what happened to flying cars and everybody wearing the same jumpsuit when we hit the year 2000. Because every movie I ever watched prior to that, everyone wore uniform, silver, white, matching one-piece suits. Everyone looked the same with different haircuts, and everyone had flying cars and ray guns. And I was fully prepared for a knock at the door on January the 1st, 2000, with here's your ray gun, here's your flying car, and here's your jumpsuit. We're now here. And it didn't happen. And I want to know why.
I was more worried about what was it called? 2K? Something.
Y2K.
Yeah. I never expected anybody to knock on my door and hand me a gun. But we'll move on to the next crazy question. What is your most watched movie?
Oh, for me, it's The American President. I love it. Lots of people haven't heard of it. It's really lovely. It's got Annette Bening and Michael Douglas, and he's the president, and it's kind of a rom-com-ish kind of thing. But he's the president, and his wife had died before he became president, and he's kind of dating as the president. And he was just so much better a president than Trump that I just watched it for 4 years.
That was your get out. That was your escape. Trump.
Yes,
this is
exactly.
The president.
Did you come under certain categories? Rom-com, drama, fantasy. I've got a few. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be Star Wars because that is something I can always go back to. But in all seriousness, a movie I probably watched more than any other was Highlander.
Really?
I love that movie. I want them to make a series now, but take it back to square one. Start from the very beginning and make it more like Game of Thrones, where you've got the different tribes and the different.
That'd be a good series. I'd watch that.
And it could really work its way through. So it's not just about Connor McLeod getting to be the last one.
Yeah.
Forget all the dire sequels because they were dire.
They were.
And just start at one, and how you've got all these different, and you don't include Conor McLeod, make it a complete refresh with different characters, so you don't know who's going to win at the end.
I think we should pitch this to Simon and Three Blind Mice production. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I would know HBO or Netflix or someone to make it, Amazon Prime. It would be fantastic.
I would love to see like a table of what I've watched the most, because I've got no idea. It could be Starship Troopers. It could be sort of like Star Wars, like you said. Even Kill Bill would feature somewhere on that list, that I've watched it so many times with Tarantino movies. So I don't know what I've watched the most. I watch movies way too much.
I used to. When I left Australia to move here, I had like a 3,000 strong DVD collection.
Final crazy question. Are you more a follower or a leader?
I'm a follower.
Follower.
I think I do both in different ways. I learned I had to become a team leader in a few things, and I've learned that unless I've got someone above me to sort of bounce off and to have some kind of ultimate say, I don't do so well. Okay. But I'm very good at influencing and leading others and doing that. So I sort of come in the middle somewhere.
Laura, what are you more comfortable with?
Neither. I've never really done either. No, it's not what I do. I'm very kind of self-contained. I'm very on my own. And yeah, I don't want people to follow me. I don't want to lead anyone anywhere, and I don't want to follow anybody else. So yeah, I kind of plow my own furrow, kind of genuinely, kind of emotionally, in work, in everything.
So you're like a lone wolf.
Well, I'm not sure I quite go that far. I'm like a lone kitten.
Lone kitten. Let's stick with that one. But for me, I am a follower and I am a leader, same. But I think it's more the fact that if the leader I've got respect for, I've always seen a leader as being able to do something that I can't. And if it's someone that can do everything I can do, or less well than what I can do, then I kind of lose respect and don't follow as well. But I think that's just in life. I'm only talking about work and my previous boss, but never mind. Anyway, shall we get into the podcast? Again, thank you for joining us, Laura. We like to talk about a few personal bits and what you've worked on. The research showed me that you wrote a book, Odd Girl Out.
I did, yeah.
What is the book about?
So essentially, I got a late autism diagnosis in my 40s, and it was an enormous shock to me. And I kind of spent a year kind of not really coming to terms with it, but kind of getting my head around what it meant, and kind of doing that flashback thing where I thought back to lots of other periods of my life and suddenly everything made sense. It was like the scene at the end of Sixth Sense where he's suddenly like, oh my God, yeah, I understand it all. And that's what it's like. I'd be like in the supermarket reaching for something and I think, oh my God, that's why I couldn't eat school lunches, or, oh, wow, that's why this happened, or whatever. And so I'm a journalist and author. I've written a number of books and lots of kind of newspaper and magazine features. It's kind of what I do. So, and I think when you're a writer, I think what happens when anything big happens in your life, you think, how will I write about this? And as I came out of my diagnosis, which anyone who's been through it will know it takes hours and hours and hours, and I kind of walked out on this really hot summer's day into the street in Norwich, and suddenly there was like this rush of sound, and I just stood there on the pavement for a minute thinking, what am I going to say about this? How am I going to write about this? So I wrote a piece for the Telegraph about the diagnosis and everything, but it didn't feel enough, and I got a massive response from it. So I just decided to write a book essentially chronicling the year after my diagnosis, but also kind of flashing back in time, so telling the story of my childhood and everything that happened between that point and the diagnosis. So yeah,
I've met so many people. It seems to be, especially for women, this late diagnosis seems to be a really, if you're going to get diagnosed, it seems to be later in life. We've discussed on previous episodes lots about the fact that obviously there's this sort of big gender divide with diagnosis, and the fact that the techniques for diagnosis are very male biased. But I think I've met a lot of people in the last couple of years who have had, particularly women, as I say, who've had a late diagnosis, and it's almost, they've sort of described it as seeing all the pieces sort of fall into place.
It is, yeah, it's like that. Suddenly everything makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, was it like a proper mind blow, like a mind storm type thing, or was it over a period of time, did you sort of things just clicking and
I think the vast majority of women like me who've had a family, who've had a career, who've been relatively successful, I think by the time we walk into that room seeking a diagnosis, we're pretty sure what the answer is going to be. But my story is quite interesting. I got an EDS diagnosis and I was in hospital having further tests for something called POTS. And I just had this epic meltdown in the hospital because the tests are really hardcore. They starve you for 24 hours. They put you on a tilt table where you're kind of tilted kind of upright and you're strapped in and you're starving and it's really hot and they make you really hot and then they make you really cold by holding ice and they do horrible, it's like torture. And I was told that at the end of it, I'd be able to go to my room in the hospital, I'd be able to lie down, have a nap. It would be very cool because there was air conditioning and I'd have a tuna sandwich. And I got in there and none of those things are true. The room was hot, the air conditioning had broken. It was the hottest day of the year in London. It was in the middle of July. There was a screaming baby in the room next door who was just like epically loud. There was no tuna sandwich. There was no water. There was no cup of tea. And I just totally lost it. And whenever I've done things like that before, everyone has thought that I was like really entitled. I think I'd be called a Karen now and just really spoiled and really entitled. But the nurse kind of sat down in the bed and she just kind of patted my knee and she's just like, I'm really sorry, we should have done better. We see loads of autistic people coming through for these tests and, you know, we've really failed. Let me do this, let me do that. And she's like, let me get you the sandwich now. And I'm like, okay, I'm not autistic, but I'm not telling her because I really want this sandwich. Lying in bed that night, I realized I didn't actually know anything about autism. I kind of had this sort of skewed perspective that was Rain Man. And I thought I was the opposite of autistic because I communicate for a living. You know, I literally do that. And it's allegedly a communication disorder. And, you know, I'm married and I've got lots of friends and all of the things that you think isn't true. I like clothes, you know, I like fashion, all of the stuff that you think is unautistic is me. So I started Googling it and I went down that kind of internet rabbit hole and then started to come across groups of women on Facebook and female autistic people. And suddenly it just kind of was a bit like, yeah, well, doesn't everyone do that? And isn't it like that for everyone? And so it's a bit of so by the time I came out of the hospital, I kind of was pretty sure.
That makes sense. What's the reception been like for your book, Odd Girl Out?
Overwhelmingly positive, yeah. So really bizarrely at the time, this isn't the case now because it's a few years ago, at the time it was the first memoir published by a female autistic adult in the UK. So if you think about it, if you think about how many parents' books there have been, how many men's books there have been, and it was like the first one from a woman, and that was just extraordinary. So the media interest was enormous, which was great because lots and lots of people, suddenly realised that they were autistic. And so it was great to just have this kind of real blast in the media over a period of a number of weeks. And generally, all of the reviews have been really positive and lovely, apart from one hilarious woman who was upset about my views on Brexit. So she said that I shouldn't have used my book to talk about Brexit, which is very funny.
It's funny how people weave their own personal issues into something that's completely irrelevant just because you happen to mention something.
But yeah, overwhelmingly positive. And one of the really great things that has happened for me is that when I got my EDS diagnosis, I hadn't met anyone with EDS before. And then I started to meet loads and loads and loads of autistic people. And suddenly it became really clear to me that this couldn't be coincidence, that there must be a link to it. There must be, I can't have just had these two random things. And then suddenly found all of these other women and men and boys and girls and non-binary people and all sorts of like this whole community of people who had both things, who were autistic and had EDS. So I started to do quite a lot of research into that. And I started talking about it. And I started talking about it on TV and in talks that I did and on my book tour. And it was really interesting because there was a point when I did anything with an audience, there was this point where I'd sort of talk about my EDS and suddenly everybody, like there'd be a kind of, if out of an audience of 100, there'd be 10 people suddenly on their phones. And at the beginning I thought, oh, they're really bored about this kind of EDS thing. And then suddenly, but then they started coming up to me afterwards and saying, oh my God, I Googled it while you were talking and I definitely have that. And look, my body does this. And look, this has happened to me. And so they were starting to make the link themselves. And so I think one of the things that I'm kind of most pleased about in terms of having written the book and having talked about it is that there are so many people who have either for themselves or their kids suddenly got an EDS diagnosis having had an autism diagnosis before, or vice versa.
Has there been any studies in the link between autism and EDS?
They're starting to come through now, so there are a number out there now. And Jessica Eccles at Sussex University had been doing studies on anxiety and hypermobility, and then kind of I think that's now moved into autism and hypermobility. So yeah, for years, one of the things that physicians looked at when they were diagnosing a child with autism was hypermobility, and it appears on loads of lists. So it is definitely coming through. But yeah, there's definitely some American studies and someone from like one of the Scandi countries. But yeah, it's coming through now.
It fascinates me because there seem to be so many links between a number of conditions, if you want to say that, certain neurodiversities. And there seem to be really strong links. One of the first things that happened when I took my daughter to the hospital, she needed to go to A&E. She stubbed her toe at a soft play. And we had this, and she was just freaking out. She wouldn't let the doctor touch her. And he was like, "Is she autistic?" And I was like, "Well, yes, we haven't got diagnosis yet. It's a stupidly long process, and she's a girl, so it makes it that much more complicated." He's like, "Yeah, no, I get it." But he made the point that there seems to be a really strong link between autism and bipolar disorder in later life if it goes undiagnosed, and particularly in women. My wife is bipolar, and she's sort of come to an understanding now that she's most likely autistic. She hasn't been diagnosed with it, but she's got enough on her plate without another label being sort of stuck on at the moment, I think. But it just amazes me that there are so many, I hate the phrase comorbid, but these co-diagnosed conditions. So for my daughter, she's autistic, she's sensory processing disorder, she's ADHD, and she's pathologically demand avoidant. And all these things come together, but really they're all part of the same.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. So I don't have an ADHD diagnosis, but I definitely have, well, not necessarily the hyperactive bit, but I definitely have ADD. My psychiatrist realizes that. We talked about it, but like your wife, it's just really, is there any point? Do I need it now? I know what the strategies are, so I can use those. But I think you're right, and I think that we take a group of traits in the case of neurodiversity, or symptoms in the case of an illness, and then we say, well, it's that. But often I think there's crossover. And so the more neurodivergent people you meet, the more you realize that actually there are lots of things that we all have in common, although we might have different labels given to us by doctors.
Is there any further plans to write any more books?
Oh, yes, definitely. So I've written a lot of books on all sorts of subjects. It's just, and yes, I definitely plan to write more. But I've been really struggling because I have ADD and because the world's gone completely nuts. And also I kind of ghostwrite books and do other stuff like that. And that's what I've been working on lately.
How's lockdown been for you? I'm interested in the sort of ADHD lockdown link, because I know from my daughter, stuck inside for long periods of time, it's like lighting a fuse on TNT. You're waiting. How's it been for you?
It's been really hard for me for lots of reasons. So I'm on the clinically extremely vulnerable list. So my lockdown at the beginning was really tough. My lockdown at the beginning was, don't leave your bedroom if you don't have to. You can open a window. Don't go within 2 meters of any member of your household. Don't eat in the kitchen. Don't use the kitchen with them. Be the first person to use the bathroom, and then make sure the bathroom's clean before you. I mean, honestly, it was just really quite hardcore rules. And then my father died, and my mother had a mental breakdown and has kind of moved in with us. And anyone who's read my book will know that I was adopted as a child. I didn't spend much time with her as a child. She's a little bit of a stranger. I don't really have a relationship with her. So that's kind of been quite interesting. So we moved house as well, thankfully. And then 2 of my children came home. One finished uni and one split up with his girlfriend. So they came back home. And I've been trying to work. And my husband had a business that collapsed because of the pandemic. And he couldn't work from April till, until recently, really. He had very little work. And then his mother died, and honestly, really, so I think we've had a pretty tough time during lockdown. Having had quite a very calm, very routine, very easy life before, suddenly it just all went a bit bonkers, and has been really hard to cope with, actually.
That's got to play into the autistic side of things as well, isn't it? Because that's just talk about a change in routine. You've got a change in routine on a change in routine and a change in routine. It's like.
And I think that we have this thing like where we talk about PDA and autism, whatever. And personally, I think that there's just, for me, they feel like the same thing. So I can do, if I want to do something like write a book or, I don't know, kind of, present a TV program or anything like that, I can just do it really easily. But having my mum here, I find her demands like almost impossible to cope with, even though those demands can be quite small, like, it can be, can you ring the doctor for me, please? Or, I have to ring the electricity company to tell them something about her house, or the insurance company, whatever. But those demands can seem so overwhelming that they're like climbing a mountain.
It does. And you're quite vocal about the Anticlassical brigade. Do you think there's an agenda there? Or do you think they truly believe all of that, everything that's been put on the internet that's complete and utter rubbish?
I think there are a few things. I think that there is a kind of cohort of people who, whose business is shocking. So, that they're in the business of shock. And the more they shock people, the higher the ratings there are for whatever it is they're doing, whether it's the higher number of clicks on their newspaper column, or the more people that would tune into their radio show or whatever. So I think there are those people who are attention seeking. But then I think there are a lot of people who are very, very, very scared. I mean, this is really, really terrifying. We are in this situation where all of our liberty has been removed from us, where there is this virus that is killing, yesterday, 1,800 people. That, it's a really scary situation. And I think sometimes people make up stories to help them deal with the scariness. And for some people, the idea that it's some kind of global conspiracy is soothing in some ways. I had
a chat to a guy yesterday who... I do crossing duty. I'm a lollipop man. Without a lollipop, I don't get a lollipop. But it's always a joke. Everyone. I get people drive by. Where's your lollipop? But I was talking to this chap yesterday. He was asking why I was wearing my mask, and I was like, well, I've got a bit of a cough. It's not COVID. I'm fine, but it's just a courtesy to everybody else, isn't it?
Yeah.
He started going off on this rant about the fact that they've shown that 4 hours wearing a mask is like being 4 minutes starved of oxygen and does brain damage. And then it's, he's got 1.8% chance or something of getting COVID and being hurt by it compared to this. And I'd rather not wear a mask. And it's like, do you understand this isn't about you? The mask stops other people getting ill, and it's actually about protecting other people. And that's a load of horse crap, because you're never wearing a mask unless you're working in a shop, in which case they've got, glass masks and plastic masks and stuff that you don't have. It's not an issue. You're only wearing it for short bursts of time. Why are you making these excuses?
And the thing that makes me really particularly angry, so I'm exempt from wearing a mask, but I can wear one, so I do. I do find it quite hard sometimes if I have to wear it for a very long period of time. I do find it difficult. I get sensory issues. I find that I itch. I do find that it makes breathing slightly harder. And I feel a bit claustrophobic and overwhelmed. But I manage to. There are lots of people who can't manage to. Yeah. And when you've got the mask deniers and the people who are kind of coming out with all of these conspiracy theories and things like that, it makes it way worse for the people who genuinely cannot wear a mask. So if every time we went to the shop, pretty much everyone apart from 3 or 4 people was wearing a mask, we would look at those people and think, oh, they obviously have an exemption. But now we look at those people and think, oh my God, they're a conspiracy theorist. Oh, really? And so suddenly we're feeling very negative towards that. And I saw this thing with Lawrence Fox the other day where he said he'd ordered a lanyard off Amazon. And, the sunflower lanyard thing was really important to people. I very rarely use the lanyard, but I have done in an airport. I find airports incredibly difficult to cope with, and flying very difficult. So I've worn a lanyard and everyone's been very kind. But now I think they'll look at someone like me wearing a lanyard like that, and they'll again just think I'm a conspiracy theorist rather than somebody who does actually have additional needs and would appreciate a bit of extra help.
Lawrence Fox has ruined Lewis for me, because I really enjoy that show. I like all the British detective and police procedural stuff. I love Lewis, I love Endeavour, I love all that stuff. I can't watch it now because every time I see him, I want to go punch my television.
You feel sorry for those people that are exempt and can't wear a mask, because now they have been put right dead centre in between the conspiracy theorists and those good people that do wear a mask but are genuinely scared, and they're right in the middle. The last thing they need is hassle, and then you get They said Lawrence Fox, who's goading those people, and then putting an anxiety hashtag on it as well, which was just ridiculous.
I know, it's outrageous. It's just totally attention seeking and so outrageous. But I don't know. I mean, personally, I do argue with people on the internet a lot, and also I'm kind of quite obsessed with conspiracy theories. So I go on all the QAnon boards and things to see what people are talking about. It's a genuine fascination of mine. Most often, they're just really sad people who have something lacking in their life.
Yes.
And they find a sense of community. I mean, if you think you're really special and you're the only people that believe that, I don't know, that, that there's some kind of satanic cult in the White House now, or that COVID is a global conspiracy so that they can microchip us all or something, or whatever. If you believe those things, and you've got other people that believe them with you, then it's incredibly powerful and bonding, like kind of like religion in a way, that you're with people that believe the same thing that you believe in, and you found this kind of amazing cult, really. And looking at the QAnon boards yesterday was amazing, because they thought everything was going to come to fruition yesterday. They thought Biden was going to be arrested at the inauguration. They thought all this stuff was going to happen, and in the end, one bloke turned up to protest and was a bit upset that nobody else was there, and that was it. And suddenly all of these things that they put all of their kind of energy and belief into has just gone.
I want a version of Violin which has just got Trump, Boris, Katie Hopkins, Lawrence Fox, and maybe a few other cockwombles that we can add in the mix, and see how long they last together and see what happens. I think that would be amazing television.
It would be amazing. Yeah, it would. One of the things that I think we need to do really is actually start sitting down and talking to people, not in that kind of very binary Twitter way where everyone's spit out. You're either us, you're there. I think we need to have a series of, when we can, real life events where we kind of go to a theatre and you take somebody who has one view and you take somebody who has another view, and you have a really great moderator and you get them to talk. Because I think that genuinely people have more in common than they have that divides them, but we just get stuck. And I see myself doing that. I get stuck in my binary position, and I find it difficult to listen to other people, even though I really try. And then there are lots of people who just don't bother to try.
There's a friendship element, like you said, the community. The issue is what you're asking these people to do is not only to explain to them why they're wrong and to admit it, but then you're actually asking them to break ties with the whole community, that they may talk about different stuff as well, personal things, and all of a sudden you're asking them to cut it all. It's a very, very tough pill to swallow when they've made all these friends. And this goes right across. This is politics, COVID, flat earthers, all of these things where they feel like they're wanted and they've got people like-minded. So
also there are some really dangerous people out there. If you divide people and you get your little group of people that really believe in you, then suddenly you have currency. Suddenly you're worth something. And I see that in the autism thing as well. I think that there are some people who are very invested in spitting out parents from autistic adults. And I've been really lucky, I think, that I get very little abuse online, and I engage with all sorts of people online, and my Twitter following is very, very diverse in terms of points of view of people, and I tend to get on with everyone. But I do see that there is this very polarized, all parents are bad, or all autistic adults are bad, or my child is more affected, or blah blah blah. And it just turns into this massively loud row, when actually I think that parents of autistic kids have a lot to offer to autistic adults, and vice versa. I think autistic adults have a great deal to offer to the parents of autistic kids.
What you're saying really hits home with me. I've tweeted it a few times, and in fact, the video I put up on my other channel was all about this. I don't want my daughter fearing me because I'm neurotypical, and I don't want her thinking that I fear or don't respect her because she's neurodiverse. I don't want her thinking she can't come to me with a problem and I'm not going to try and help. Even if my heck is, and I'm so fortunate that I've got a number of autistic friends and I can go and ask these questions and, reaching out to people. No one's going to understand what my daughter's going through better than someone else who's gone through it. And we had this with my daughter, His Voices. And when she told me that, she'd thrown a plate against the wall and running down the wall. And it had come out of nowhere. I'd literally gone upstairs to the loo and come down, and there was just dinner all over my wall. And I'm like, what the heck? And she said, the voice told me to do it. And And because my wife's bipolar affective disorder, so she hears voices, and her mum, her birth mother, was schizophrenic. So instantly my mind's just gone, oh, we're in a whole new realm here, aren't we? But I was lucky that I was able to speak to a couple of my autistic friends who were there to say, oh, no, yeah, we get the voices. That's really common in autism. And they explained it to me about the whole sort of, for you, it's just your thoughts, it's your internal monologue. For her, the brain interprets it differently, and it takes on a separate voice, but it can be a real problem because they can be quite malevolent sometimes. And I was like, wow, that makes so much sense, and was such a relief. But I get so annoyed when you hear people say, well, you can't understand because you're neurotypical. No, I can't understand from inside the box, but I can attempt to empathize.
Exactly. Yeah.
Respect by seeking out answers from the people that do know. And that way she's got someone who says that she can come to and that she trusts, who she knows will be able to be looking out for her and try and do the right thing.
Yeah.
It really gets to me.
I agree with it on both sides. I think that nobody knows their child better than the parent, generally, and nobody wants better for a child than a parent, generally. And equally, there are things that your child will experience regardless of neurotype that you're not going to understand. You have no idea what it's like to be an 11-year-old girl, for example. I have no idea what it's like to be a 5-year-old boy.
You don't know my secrets, do you?
So in doing that, in kind of seeking out answers, it's really helpful. And also, I think that there's this feeling that it will be kind of like, oh, the autistic person will always come down the side of the child. One of my really close friends has an autistic son who's going through a bit of a phase and can be incredibly naughty. And she'll ring me and she'll say, oh, he's done this and everything. And, and I'm holding back. And I'm like, okay, so if he wasn't autistic and he was behaving like that, what would you do? And she'd be like, well, I'd tell him off. And I'm like, I think you need to tell him off. You can't, you have to understand that things are more difficult for autistic children and also easier in some respects, but equally you still have to have a household that works.
I do think there is a divide. I do think people live for the divide between neurodiverse and neurotypical. I do see the comment being made a lot, and it did affect me a little bit at the start, where it would be this tweet that would go around all the time in different situations. Do you do this, or are you neurotypical? And at first I was kind of like, I don't know whether to take offense to that, but as I went on with social media and met more autistic people, speaking to parents, I realized, much like the feminist movement, they aren't specifically talking about me. They aren't.
Yeah.
If I turn around and went, I take offense to that, then they are talking about me. I realize now that they aren't. They are talking about those specific people that do those things. So
yeah.
It's about understanding, though. To build those bridges, there has to be an understanding.
Mutual on both sides, and that's the key.
Yeah, and I think it's that thing where you ask yourself a question: do I grope women? No. Okay, they're not talking about me. Am I abusive to my kid? No, they're not talking about me. And then you realise that actually the people they are talking about are people that you don't like either.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so true, because you're absolutely right. The other side bugs me more, because I've got a tremendous amount of respect for all that stuff.
When you do get involved in their tweets, even they know you're neurotypical, most of the time it becomes a good conversation as well, because you end up agreeing about the same things. Even when when it's feminism, when you turn around and say, I agree, they shouldn't be doing this, and you see that they weren't talking about you because they're engaging with you in a positive manner. So I'm not sure what it is, whether it's frail egos as you go in and not quite informed enough that you sort of, are they talking about me? Are they? Yeah. I don't know whether to get aggressive here or defensive or what.
Probably you're right. I'm not. There are going to be things which I can't understand for my daughter, but that's where I will go and ask autistic friends, because they're going to have much better answers. But it hurts that I can't always be the one to help her sometimes. I think that's a natural father thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to even if she were neurotypical. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. I think that we have, particularly younger kids, that this is a generation that none of us have experienced what they're experiencing, regardless. They've grown up on the internet. We don't understand what that feels like. We don't understand what it's like to grow up with literally no privacy. we don't understand what it's like to, when you get home from school, not be able to escape the people you were at school with. There's so much stuff that we don't understand because we haven't experienced it. It doesn't make us worse parents. In a way, I think it makes us better parents, because it gives us the, because we have the choice. We can go out and seek out other people that do understand it, and we can seek out that information, which will generally be solid information, or we can just say it wasn't like that for me, and then the children will get to see a different side of things.
I think that's absolutely right as well. And it's kind of sneaked up on us. This wave of information and technology is sneaked up on us, hasn't it? It kind of whispered at the start, and then all of a sudden, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything's thrown at you, and there is zero privacy. It's very difficult to get away with. You could walk down the street and someone could take a picture of you and upload it to the internet. There's no, you can't get away from it.
I got in trouble for that once. My whole office was opposite from a library, and they had some kind of sort of mature ladies meeting group that used to sort of meet across there. And I looked out of my window, and they were all lined up against the wall, all smoking cigarettes. And I took a photo and just popped it up, and I made a meme out of it that just said, I didn't choose the thug life, And I had four of them came into the office. What's this you put on? I'm like, whoa, I'll take it off. It's okay. It was just a joke.
Yeah.
My granddaughter doesn't know I smoke. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't been trained on it. We haven't been taught how to deal with the internet. And if you think about it, would you have taken that picture, taken it to be developed, and put up that picture on trees all along the street with the same note? You wouldn't do that, because it sounds insane and intrusive and terrible. So I think that's a big part of it. We haven't learned how to behave online because no one's ever taught us. And I think that it's very easy to kind of get into a row or say something wrong or whatever. And the thing that people don't tend to do online is say, oh my God, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to upset you. I'm really sorry. I've learned this. Now I know that this means this or whatever. But it's just this whole everything's pitted against everyone else that is just kind of wrong and sad.
I want to talk about the diner story. I saw it on the Guardian article, and you were in a video for it. First question I want to ask, that's a true story, isn't it?
It is. It is a true story. So the Guardian came to me and asked me whether I would work on a story with them about sensory overload in video form. I came up with a script with them, which was a specific restaurant that I went to on a specific day, and those specific things did happen. But it was also an amalgamation of every single restaurant I've ever been into in my whole life, that it was kind of built on a lot of experience. But yeah, it's a restaurant in Norwich.
If you went back to the diner, would it be easier to cope now all of those things would occur, or would it be the same outcome?
The truth is, it depends, because I think, like everybody, I think we have levels of tolerance. So if it had been a really great day and I'd eaten enough and everything had gone smoothly and I hadn't been overloaded in any way, then yeah, I'd cope better. If it had been a day in the midst of lockdown when everything was really hard and it's been awful and I haven't eaten enough and I'm tired and I've got a headache, then no, I wouldn't cope better. But I'd know why I behaved that way.
Yeah, because you said that you kind of darted out like a missile and then came back in, and you were kind of sheepishly went back to your table and was worried what other people thought as well.
Yeah.
Did that subside while you were there? Once you'd sat down and reflected, did it subside, all those sensory overloads?
It can do a bit, and technology really helps with that. So kind of noise cancelling AirPods, for example, now are great for dealing with that. So I can just put on a really low level kind of meditation music or something in a restaurant and have my AirPods on noise cancellation and still have a conversation with the person sitting next to me. I mean, I don't ever really care about what people think about me. I mean, I've been on a plane once where they wouldn't give me the seat that I'd booked, and I have to have the same seat on the plane. So I said, well, okay, fine, I'll get off. And suddenly every single row along the plane was talking about me like she's getting off now. And then they turned to them, she said she's getting off. And I think you just have to see the funny side of it. And they said to my husband, they can't sit in that seat because if the plane went down, she's in an emergency position and she's autistic, so she can't sit in that seat. And my husband was like, if she sits in the seat and the plane goes down, she'll be the one who'd save it. She'll be the one who isn't hysterical and who will look at the information and who will learn how to land it and who will open the doors correctly. But it's, but you know, if that were to happen. But what's happening now is you told her something was going to happen, and now you're telling her it can't happen for no good reason. If you said she can't sit in that seat because the seat's broken, then fine. But you didn't say that. You said it because of an arbitrary reason that isn't true. And I think that's, I think everything about autism is situational.
It's systemic. When you say things like that, I've done it in the past. It's not until you've had that information and you learn that you stop making those judgments. Even in children, you stop. Those people that turn around, oh, they're being naughty, give them a smack on the arse or something along those lines, and then you realize, you come into that huge wave of information, and you realize that you don't know what these people are going through.
Exactly. And I think we make judgments based not just on their behavior, but how they present themselves as well. So, for example, I've got quite a plummy accent, so people think I'm an entitled Karen. If you had if it's like some, you know, I don't know, a bloke in scruffy clothes with South London accent, you'll just presume he's a thug. Or we make those assumptions about people rather than actually kind of wondering what's actually going on with them.
We wanted to introduce a new feature just to make the episode a little bit more interactive. This is from Lisa on Twitter. How were you diagnosed with autism? How did you think at the time that you were always going to get it, or did you hit a certain point and then go and try and get diagnosed?
I think it's a story that's common to everyone, so it's good to tell it. I always knew there was something different about me. I always knew there was physically something wrong with me, and that I didn't process information and behave the same way as other people. I knew that from the time I was 5. I remember clearly standing in the school playground, looking at the other girls, thinking, I'm not like you. And then my next thought was, but nobody must ever know. I've got to hide this. My mum kept taking me to the doctors as a child, but my mum had a mental health problem, so they put it down to her neurosis. And then as I got older, I got misdiagnosed, as is really common with autistic women and women with EDS. I got misdiagnosed with something called hyperventilation syndrome, and I was given very addictive drugs, and I ended up in rehab. And in rehab, they treat you that you're not special and different. No one is special and different. So I stopped thinking I was different and tried to carry on. And it wasn't until I got my EDS diagnosis and was in the hospital, as I explained, that I said that autism suddenly came into my sphere of knowledge. And I realized that I was autistic. And so then I spent about 3 or 4 weeks thinking, will I do anything about this or won't I? And then I just couldn't not know. I just needed a professional to kind of confirm it for me. And so I was very lucky. I had private health insurance. I found a great psychiatrist near where I live, and I went to see her, and she, over a period of 2 sessions, gave me my diagnosis.
What you're saying there resonates so much, because they seem to love throwing every other possibility. But it seems like in a world of horses, they're looking for zebras, if you want to use that thing. It's like, there's so many, for my daughter, there's so many obvious signs of autism and PDA and all these bits. And now that she's got this working diagnosis, everyone's like, oh yeah, of course, we can see that from, but for the rest of the time, everyone's trying to go, oh, well, no, it's some kind of separation anxiety. She's responding to this thing that's happened or that thing that's happened. It's like, why is it so hard for you to just go, it's got legs, it neighs, and it's got a tail, it's a horse? Why are they looking for zebras and excuses not to diagnose it? It baffles me. And private insurance is great for that.
Well, it's really interesting because I went to a conference of psychiatrists and was a speaker there, and there were questions from the audience. And one woman put her hand up. She's a consultant psychiatrist. She said, "There's a woman in one of in a secure unit. I know she's autistic, but I know that there'll be no support for her. So should I give her the diagnosis or not?" And I'm like, hang on a second. So you're not going to tell her the truth about herself because the system is so screwed up that it won't support her. You have to tell her the truth. And that literally happened. So yeah, I don't know why. And then I think that there's a school of thought that if you give somebody a label, they'll live down to it, kind of thing, which I think is really untrue. I think if you give somebody the knowledge about themselves, then they will become their best self.
I think that's absolutely true.
I completely agree. And I think from what there's this whole labeling thing is just woefully inaccurate, because for myself, I'm neurotypical, but there have been things in my past I've had to come to terms with, and things that have happened to me and experiences I've had that have had effects on me and so forth. And I think until you're aware that those things have occurred. I watched a really interesting documentary about systemic abuse in college in the States. It was a nun that had been murdered, and it was all turned out to be covering up this historic abuse that had been taking place. And the woman who was really key in this basically had repressed memories, and they were sort of coming back, and she was working through them. And it wasn't until she could work through those things and know her past and know who she is now that it all made sense. So you could label her an abuse victim, but that's actually not right. She was an abuse victim, but that's part of the core of who she became as an adult, and part of the reason why she was so incredible as an adult. It was, her past informed it. And in the same way, some of the most amazing people I know are autistic people, and it's often because of. I have a friend who makes jewelry, and sells it, and she has hyperfocus. And so her hyperfocus really benefits a business because she can sit there and work for hours and hours and hours, just zoned in on what she's doing, and makes the most incredible jewelry. And she knows it's all based on nature around her. So she looks at microorganisms and sort of micro environments, and she sees things that no one else sees. And it all comes from her art. If she wasn't aware of her autism, she wouldn't know how to tap into that as well. It's actually something that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
One last question. She did have 4, but we've kind of asked them as we've gone along and talked. The last question Lisa has is, what positive message would you give girls that are autistic?
Well, I think that a lot's happened lately that makes things really cool for girls who are autistic. I mean, look at someone like Greta Thunberg. She's just amazing. Somebody who's really leading the conversation on a really important issue, who's doing so really classily with great intelligence and humility, but who's also really, really funny. Her tweets to Donald Trump are hilarious.
I know.
And she's just great. I think childhood can be tough. I think it can be particularly tough for autistic people, because the one thing that's common about most people's childhood is that you don't have total agency over yourself and over your environment and over everything else. Through no fault of parents, you might have siblings who you might live in a noisy house. You might, whatever. You're not making your own choices. The house might be quiet, whatever. But you will grow up and you will be able to create your own environment. But I think that now, being autistic now as a child growing up is probably one of the better times. I think there is more understanding. People are more interested generally, and there are some awesome autistic role models out there.
You're an inspiration. That's what I'd like to say. It's so great to be able to talk to someone like yourself, because it just gives me great hope for the future, because you're channeling your gifts into something that is just so important, and you speak so passionately about it, and it really comes across. So I just want to really thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely.
Honestly, I could have spoke to you all day long.
Oh, well, thank you. I've had such a lovely time. Sorry I was so rubbish at the quiz.
No, we don't judge on that.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. That's all we've got for this week. I want to thank, as always, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, mate. And a big, big thank you to our guest today, Laura James.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've had such a lovely time.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Laura. And please, everyone, hit like, hit subscribe, hit that bell so that you do get notifications of new information going up and new content that we've got happening. As I say, we've got a stack of great stuff coming. Stay safe, stay well, and we will see you next time.